Hello, welcome back. Let's read some more. I'm finished uploading, but I just like to lay in my bed reading and relax. It's not super important what I'm reading, but right now I'm reading about Nazi Germany. But that's not a very nice subject, so I cannot keep reading about this next many week because this is not very nice to read. It's not nice to read about and talk about. But now I'm reading about Nazi Germany. I have to read about Adolf Hitler.
Adolf Hitler's rise to power. Page semi-protected. Hitler in conversation with Ernst Hamster Engel and Hermann Göring. The 21st of June 1932, Adolf Hitler's rise to power began in the newly established Weimar Republic in September 1919 when Hitler joined the Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, DAP, German Workers' Party. He rose to a place of prominence in the early years of the party. Being one of its most popular speakers, he was made the Parteileader after he threatened to otherwise leave. In 1920, the DAP renamed itself to the National Sozialistische Deutsche Arbeiterpartei instead, National Socialist German Workers' Party, commonly known as the Nazi Party. Hitler chose this name to win over left-wing German workers. 1. 2. Despite the NSDAP being a right-wing party, it had many anti-capitalist and anti-bourgeois elements. Hitler later initiated a purge of these elements and reaffirmed the Nazi Party's pro-business stance. By 1922, Hitler's control over the party was unchallenged. In 1923, Hitler and his supporters attempted a coup in Bavaria. This seminal event was later called the Beer Hall Putsch. Upon its failure, Hitler escaped, only to be subsequently arrested and put on trial. The trial proved to be a blessing in disguise for Hitler, as it garnered him national fame. Hitler was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but he would only serve 8 months. During this time, Hitler wrote Mein Kampf, which became a vademecum of National Socialism. Once released, Hitler switched tactics, opting to instead seize power through legal and democratic means. Hitler, armed with his newfound celebrity, began furiously campaigning. During the 1920s, Hitler and the Nazis ran on a platform consisting of anti-communism, anti-Semitism, and ultranationalism. Nazi Parteileaders vociferously criticized the ruling democratic government and the Treaty of Versailles, while proselytizing their desire to turn Germany into a world power. At this time, most Germans were indifferent to Hitler's rhetoric as the German economy was beginning to recover in large part due to loans from the United States under the Dawes Plan. 3. The German political landscape was dramatically affected by the 1929 Wall Street crash, which hampered economic aid to Germany. The Great Depression brought the German economy to a halt and further polarized German politics. Hitler and the Nazis began to exploit the crisis and loudly criticized the ruling government. During this tumultuous time, the German Communist Party also began campaigning and called for a revolution. Business leaders, fearful of a communist takeover, began supporting the Nazi Party. Hitler ran for the presidency in 1932 but was defeated by the incumbent Paul von Hindenburg. Nonetheless, he achieved a strong showing of second place in both rounds. Following this, in July 1932, the Nazis became the largest party in the Reichstag, albeit short of an absolute majority. 1933 was a pivotal year for Hitler and the Nazi Party. Traditionally, The leader of the party who held the most seats in the Reichstag was appointed Chancellor. However, President von Hindenburg was hesitant to appoint Hitler as Chancellor. Following several backroom negotiations which included industrialists, Hindenburg's son, the former Chancellor Franz von Papen, and Hitler, Hindenburg acquiesced, and on the 30th of January, 1933, he formally appointed Adolf Hitler as Germany's new Chancellor. Although he was Chancellor, Hitler was not yet an absolute dictator. The groundwork for the Nazi dictatorship was laid when the Reichstag was set on fire in February. Asserting that the communists were behind the arson, Hitler convinced von Hindenburg to pass the Reichstag fire decree, which severely curtailed the liberties and rights of German citizens. Using the decree, Hitler began eliminating his political opponents. In Hitler's eyes, the decree was insufficient, and he proposed the Enabling Act of 1933. This law gave the German government the power to override individual rights prescribed by the Constitution. Additionally, it also gave the Chancellor, Hitler, emergency powers to pass and enforce laws without parliamentary oversight. The Enabling Act was passed in March, and by April, Hitler held de facto dictatorial powers and used them to order the construction of the first Nazi concentration camp at Dachau for communists and other political opponents. Hitler's rise to power was completed in August 1934 when, following the death of President von Hindenburg, Hitler merged the chancellery with the presidency and became Führer, the sole leader of Germany. In retrospect, Hitler's rise to power was aided in part by his willingness to use violence in advancing his political objectives and to recruit party members willing to do the same. Furthermore, Hitler went out of his way to seek financial support from wealthy businessmen, without whose support his assumption of power would have been impossible. 4. Hitler framed their partnership as an essential factor in defeating the rising threat of communism. The party engaged in electoral battles in which Hitler participated as a speaker and organizer. Street battles and violence also erupted between the Communists Rotfront-Kampfverband and the Nazis Sturmabteilung, SA. Once the Nazi dictatorship was firmly established, the Nazis themselves created a mythology surrounding the rise to power. German propaganda described this time period as either the Kampfzeit, the time of struggle, or the Kampfjahre, years of struggle. Early Germany. Historians have commented on the influence of German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck's process of negative integration as setting a tone of exclusion in early Germany, which had a lasting influence on later German nationalism. 5. Bismarck sought to prevent the religious and political divisions in early Germany by rallying the populace against a common enemy. Initially, Bismarck ran a campaign against the Catholic Church from 1873 to the late 1870s, referred to as Kulturkampf, questioning whether they were loyal to Berlin or other Catholic states. 5. 6. Instead of uniting German people, it instead resulted in a bolstering of support to the Catholic Church, alienating an important religious minority. 5. In 1878, Bismarck then introduced a number of anti-socialist laws that would be in effect from 1878 to 1890 in an attempt to alienate the Social Democratic Party. 5. While some sections of German society were united by this, many industrial workers rallied to the SDP. Historians have expressed that as the German state was still very new at the time, it was therefore impressionable. Bismarck's strategy of confrontation rather than consensus set a tone of either being loyal to the government or an enemy of the state, which directly influenced German nationalist sentiment and the later Nazi movement. 5. Early steps, 1918-1924. Adolf Hitler became involved with the fledgling German Workers' Party, which he would later transform into the Nazi Party after the First World War, and set the violent tone of the movement early, by forming Sturmabteilung, SA, paramilitary. 7. Catholic Bavaria resented rule from Protestant Berlin, and Hitler at first saw revolution in Bavaria as a means to power. An early attempt at a coup d'etat, the 1923 beer hall putsch in Munich, proved fruitless, however, and Hitler was imprisoned for leading the putsch. He used this time to write Mein Kampf, in which he argued that effeminate Jewish Christian ethics were enfeebling Europe, and that Germany was in need of an uncompromising strong man to restore itself and build an empire. 8. Learning from the failed coup, he decided on the tactic of pursuing power through legal means rather than seizing control of the government by force against the state, and instead proclaimed a strict legal course. 9. 10. From armistice, November 1918, to party membership, September 1919. B&W newspapers. February 1919. United States news coverage of Fumarist in Germany in 1914, after being granted permission from King Ludwig III of Bavaria. The 25-year-old Austrian-born Hitler enlisted in a Bavarian regiment of the German army, although he was not yet a German citizen. For over 4 years, August 1914 – November 1918, Germany was a major participant in World War I. After fighting on the Western Front ended in November 1918, B. Hitler was discharged on 19 November from the Pacewalk Hospital, C, and returned to Munich, which at the time was in a state of socialist Schaffevel. 11. Arriving on the 21st of November, he was assigned to 7th Company of the 1st Replacement Battalion of the 2nd Infantry Regiment. In December he was reassigned to a prisoner of war camp in Traunstein as a guard. 12. He remained there until the camp dissolved in January 1919, after which he returned to Munich and spent a couple weeks on guard duty at the city's main train station, Hauptbahnhof, through which soldiers had been traveling. 13. D. During this time a number of notable Germans were assassinated, including socialist Kurt Eisner, who was shot dead by a German nationalist on the 21st of February 1919. His rival Erhard Auer was also wounded in an attack. Empire. 8. Learning from the failed coup, he decided on the tactic of pursuing power through legal means rather than seizing control of the government by force against the state, and instead proclaimed a strict legal course. 9. 10. From armistice, November 1918, to party membership, September 1919. B&W newspapers. February 1919. United States news coverage of Fumarist in Germany in 1914, after being granted permission from King Ludwig III of Bavaria. The 25-year-old Austrian-born Hitler enlisted in a Bavarian regiment of the German army, although he was not yet a German citizen. For over 4 years, August 1914 – November 1918, Germany was a major participant in World War I. After fighting on the Western Front ended in November 1918, B. Hitler was discharged on 19 November from the Pacewalk Hospital, C, and returned to Munich, which at the time was in a state of socialist Schaffevel. 11. Arriving on the 21st of November, he was assigned to 7th Company of the 1st Replacement Battalion of the 2nd Infantry Regiment. In December he was reassigned to a prisoner of war camp in Traunstein as a guard. 12. He remained there until the camp dissolved in January 1919, after which he returned to Munich and spent a couple weeks on guard duty at the city's main train station, Hauptbahnhof, through which soldiers had been traveling. 13. D. During this time a number of notable Germans were assassinated, including socialist Kurt Eisner, who was shot dead by a German nationalist on the 21st of February 1919. His rival Erhard Auer was also wounded in an attack. Other acts of violence were the killings of both Major Paul Ritter von Jarius and the conservative MP Heinrich Ozel. In this political chaos, Berlin sent in the military called the White Guards of Capitalism by the Communists. On the 3rd of April, 1919, Hitler was elected as the liaison of his military battalion, and again on the 15th of April. During this time, he urged his unit to stay out of the fighting and not to join either side. 14. The Bavarian Soviet Republic was officially crushed on the 6th of May, when Lieutenant General Burkhard von Oven and his forces declared